It was on my 18th birthday that my life completely fell apart. Instead of a celebration, I was met with a cruel ultimatum. My parents, with unyielding expressions, and my brother, with a superior smile, threw me out of the house. They claimed I was a dead weight, a burden in their lives. My brother, always the favored one, excelled in everything I failed at. From a young age, it was evident that our parents had a favorite. My brother was the star of the family, the pride and joy of my parents. His academic and athletic achievements were displayed like trophies on the walls of our house, while my struggles and small victories were ignored or minimized. The family dynamics were always the same. I was the shadow, he was the light. The favoritism was so blatant that, when I was a child, I remember once falling ill during one of my brother's swim meets. Instead of taking care of me, my parents left me with a neighbor to watch the competition. I was alone, feverish, while they celebrated yet another victory of my brother. This kind of episode repeated constantly, reinforcing the idea that I was not as important as he was. Dazed and with nowhere to go, I found myself forced to live on the streets. I faced unimaginable hardships trying to find and keep a job. Every night was a struggle to find a safe place to sleep, and food was scarce. Living on favors, sleeping on friends' couches, was my only alternative. But even that began to wear thin over time. Sleeping on park benches or in train stations became routine. The cold nights, the constant feeling of insecurity, and the shame of being seen by acquaintances made my existence a living hell. I clung to small acts of kindness, like when a stranger gave me a blanket on a cold night or when a cafe offered me a free coffee and bread. There were moments when I almost succumbed to the temptation of going back home, kneeling and begging for the forgiveness they never deserved. But my pride stopped me. I remembered the humiliations, the harsh words, and the looks of contempt. Each time I considered returning, an inner voice reminded me of what I had suffered, and that I did not deserve to go through that again. The final straw was my high school graduation. I had worked so hard to get there, balancing studies and part-time jobs. On graduation day, while other students had their families cheering and celebrating, I was alone. My parents did not bother to show up, leaving an even bigger void in my heart. The feeling of abandonment and loneliness was overwhelming. During the ceremony, while classmates took photos with their families, I stayed on the sidelines, trying to hide my tears. After graduation, I wandered the streets aimlessly, feeling a hole in my chest. The night that should have been a celebration turned into a bitter reminder of everything I lacked. My only companion was a stray dog I found on the way back. He followed me to the place where I usually slept, and somehow his presence brought a bit of solace. I named him Chance, as a reminder that perhaps there was a second chance for me too. The emotional impact of all this was devastating. Every day I fought against despair and depression. The feeling of worthlessness, reinforced by my own family's rejection, consumed me. However, amidst all this chaos, something inside me refused to give up. A spark of hope, no matter how small, kept me standing, making me believe that one day things could get better. After months of relentless struggle, I finally landed a job in retail. It was a simple job, stocking shelves and helping customers, but it meant the world to me. It was the first time in a long while that I felt a glimmer of hope. With the modest salary, I managed to rent a small apartment. It was a tiny space with just one room, a cramped kitchen, and a bathroom, but to me it was a palace. I finally had a place to call my own. The initial difficulties were many. The rent consumed almost all of my salary, and I had to save every penny to ensure there was food on the table. The bills were a constant challenge. Many times I had to decide between paying for electricity or buying groceries. I remember nights when I lit candles because I didn't have enough money for the electric bill. However, I started to see a glimpse of stability, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Over time, I adapted to the new routine. I established a strict schedule to ensure everything was in order. I woke up early, walked to work, and did overtime whenever possible. The effort began to pay off. I managed to save a bit of money, which allowed me to buy basic furniture for the apartment. The feeling of having a real bed, instead of sleeping on the floor or on other people's couches, was indescribable. Then, the pandemic of 2020 hit. Like a tsunami, it swept away everything I had built. I lost my job when the store closed, and shortly after, I lost the apartment because I couldn't pay the rent. I was thrown back into the darkness of uncertainty. Desperate, I bought an old truck with the remaining savings. It was a vehicle in terrible condition, but I had no other choice. I transformed it into my new home, improvising a bed, a small kitchen, and a space for my belongings. With no alternatives, I asked to park the truck at my parents' house. I thought that after so many years, they might show some compassion. But the answer was a resounding no. Worse yet, I was ridiculed by my brother and his wife, who mocked my situation. Their cruel words and laughter echoed in my mind as I drove away. Transforming that truck into a home wasn't easy. I counted every penny, improvised furniture, and made the best of what I had. I installed curtains for some privacy and got a small generator for electricity. The nights were lonely and cold, but at least I had a roof over my head, even if it was improvised. The life of a nomad was full of constant challenges. Finding safe places to park was a daily battle. Many times, I was woken in the middle of the night by police or security guards, ordering me to move. Mornings began with a desperate search for a new place to stay. One of the biggest challenges was recharging energy. The generator, as useful as it was, needed fuel and money was always scarce. I used to drive to distant gas stations, where I knew the staff wouldn't kick me out, and asked to charge my phone and other small batteries while fueling the generator. Every day was a struggle to keep the basics running. Food was another constant problem. Without a proper fridge, I relied on non-perishable foods and the few things I could buy daily. I became a master at preparing simple meals with few ingredients. Many times, I ate in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city around me, remembering what it was like to have a real kitchen. Despite everything, there were moments of hope. I met other people in the same situation, forming a small support community. We shared tips, helped each other, and sometimes just talked to relieve the loneliness. It was during these conversations that I realized I wasn't alone in my struggle. There were many like me trying to survive and find a way back to stability. One day, while looking for a place to park, I found a park where several trucks and trailers were parked. There, I met a man named Carlos who lived in a trailer. He gave me valuable tips on how to make my truck more comfortable and efficient. Carlos had lived on the road for years, and his experiences were an invaluable guide for me. Thanks to him, I managed to install solar panels on the roof of the truck, which greatly eased the electricity issue. The pandemic brought additional hardships, but it also revealed a resilience I didn't know I had. Each day was a new battle, but gradually, I found my way. I learned to appreciate the small victories, like a quiet night or a hot meal. And even in the darkest moments, I kept the hope that things would get better. Even with all the adversities, my determination guided me. The truck became my home, and the community of nomads gave me moral support and practical tips. However, life on the road was tough. Each day was a struggle to survive, but I was determined not to let the situation defeat me. While living in the truck, I faced several difficulties. The first was finding safe places to park at night. Many times, I was woken up in the middle of the night by security guards or police, ordering me to move. Nights were often interrupted, leaving me exhausted and vulnerable. I started driving long distances to find areas where I knew I could stay undisturbed. During the day, the struggle continued. I had to be creative to recharge my electronic devices. I installed a small solar panel on the roof of the truck, which helped provide power for basics like my phone and a small fan. On cloudy days, I frequented public libraries or cafes to charge my things and sometimes get internet access to look for jobs. Food was another constant challenge. Without a refrigerator, I relied on non-perishable foods and the few things I could buy and consume quickly. I became an expert in simple and quick meals, often made on a small portable stove. Each meal was a battle of logistics and creativity. Then, one day, my luck changed. I got a job in another city several hours away. It was a job in a hardware store, where I would be responsible for stock and organizing products. The prospect of a new beginning was exciting but also terrifying. The move meant leaving behind the small support network I had built, but it was an opportunity one couldn't refuse. The journey to the new city was long and tiring, but full of hope. I arrived in time for my first day of work and, to my surprise, my new boss, Mr. Alvarez, was a kind and understanding man. He noticed my situation and offered me the possibility to park the truck in the store's parking lot. This offer was a blessing as it provided me with a safe and constant place to call home. The work was demanding but rewarding. Each day on the job was a step closer to stability. I started saving money again, this time with a clear goal in mind: to buy a real house. My boss, Mr. Alvarez, became a mentor to me. He taught me about the business and, more importantly, showed me that there were people willing to help. The first months were of adaptation. Besides the hard work, I needed to adjust to life in the truck. I established a routine: waking up early, having a quick coffee on the small portable stove, and then going to the store. The nights were dedicated to studying and improving my skills, hoping to advance in my career. The store's parking lot became a small oasis of stability. Over time, I began to make friends at work. They became a new support network, offering help and companionship. A colleague, Lucas, became especially close. He had also faced hardships and understood well the struggles I was going through. Together, we shared stories and supported each other. The promotion to supervisor was a moment of great pride. With more responsibility and a pay raise, I began to see the real possibility of buying a house. The process of finding the right house was long and full of obstacles, but I finally found a small home that fit my budget. Each step in the financing process was a challenge, but with each obstacle overcome, my determination increased. The day I received the keys to my new house was one of the most emotional moments of my life. The feeling of having my own place, where I could finally build a stable life, was indescribable. The house was small but perfect for me. Every corner represented a new beginning, a chance to leave the past behind and look to the future with hope. The adaptation to the new house was gradual. I still kept the truck nearby, a symbol of everything I had overcome. I used the weekends to arrange the house, buying used furniture and decorating with simple items. Each passing day, the house became more cozy and truly mine. Mr. Alvarez's support didn't stop with the promotion. He continued to be a guide and a friend, always available to offer advice and support. It was he who suggested I invest in training courses to further improve my skills. I followed his advice and, little by little, began to build a solid foundation for my future. The challenges didn't completely disappear, but the difference now was that I had a secure base from which to face them. Life still presented difficulties, but the sense of stability and security that my new house provided gave me the strength to keep fighting. Each day was an opportunity to grow and improve, and I was determined to make the most of each of these opportunities. The journey from living in the truck to having my own house was long and full of obstacles, but it taught me to value each small victory and the importance of resilience and determination. The road ahead still had many challenges, but now, with a home to call my own and a stable job, I felt more prepared than ever to face them. Chapter 4: Final Confrontation with the Family. The surprise was great when my family showed up unannounced. They invaded my space, examining every corner of the house with critical eyes. The climax of the visit was my brother's absurd request. He wanted me to give up the house to him and his family, while I would go back to living in the truck. His justification was that he needed more space, and that I, having lived so long in the truck, could do it again. The anger burned inside me, but I kept calm. I firmly refused, recording the entire conversation as evidence. When I tried to stand my ground, they tried to intimidate me, but I was prepared. Chapter 5: Resolution and Consequences. I shared my story on social media, receiving support from many relatives and friends. The reaction was mixed, but the support outweighed the criticism. My brother, defeated, had to go back to living with our parents, facing the difficulties of space and coexistence. Life with my brother's family wasn't easy for our parents. The house, small for so many people, became a battleground. I, on the other hand, finally found the peace and stability I had always sought. I reflected on everything I had gone through and realized that, despite everything, I had become stronger. Now, with my own space and a promising future, I allow myself to dream of better days. And so, I conclude my story, leaving behind the shadows of a troubled past and embracing the light of a new beginning.